unsteady. Can't hold down a service.
No, there's emergencies a lot of places and you have to go and see.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Gopi Jana Jaya Gopi Jana Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayanam Namaskritya. Aram Shaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nasta Prayeshwa Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading this morning from Canto 2, Chapter 3, Text 7. Is it 8 or 9? 9. Okay. Rajakamo Manundevan Niritim Tvavicharanyajet Nrittim Tvavicharanyajet Kama Kamo Yajet Somam Akama Purusham Param Rajakamo Manundevan Nrittim Tvavicharanyajet Kama Kamo Yajet Somam Akama Purusham Param
Rajakamo Manundevan Nirtim Tvavicharanyajet Jet.
Nirvitim Pranavachan Yajet.
Kamo Kamo Yajet Somam.
Kama Kamo Yajet Somam.
Akama Purusham Param.
Akama Purusham Param.
Rajakamo manum devan.
Rajakamo manum devan.
Nittintu abhicharan yajet.
Nirvitim Pranavachan Yajet.
Kama kamo yajet samam.
Kama Kamo Yajet Somam.
Kama purusham param.
Akama Purusham Param.
Rajakamo manun devan
Rajakamo manum devan.
nirvitam tava vicharan yaje
Nirvitam Pranavachan Yajet.
kamo kamo yajet somam
Kama Kamo Yajet Somam.
akama purusham param
Akama Purusham Param.
Vaishnavis?
Rajakamo Manundevan
Rajakamo manum devan.
Niritim Twavicharanyajet
Nirvitim Pranavachan Yajet.
Kama Kamo Yajet Somam
Kama Kamo Yajet Somam.
Kama Purusham Param
Akama Purusham Param. Rajakamo manum devan. Nirvitim Pranavachan Yajet. Kama Kamo Yajet Somam. Akama Purusham Param.
Rajakama.
Rajakama.
Anyone desiring an empire or kingdom.
Anyone desiring an empire or kingdom.
Manun.
Manum.
The Manus.
The Manus.
Semi-incarnations of God.
Semi-incarnations of God.
Devan.
Devan.
Demigods.
Demigods.
Niritim.
Niritim.
Demons.
Demons.
But.
But.
Abhicharan.
Abhicharan.
Desiring victory over the enemy.
Desiring victory over the enemies.
Yajet. Should worship.
Should worship.
Kama Kamaha.
Kama.
One who desires sense gratification.
One who desires sense gratification.
Yajet. Should worship.
Should worship.
Somam.
Somam.
The demigod named Chandra.
Demigod named Chandra.
Kamaha.
Kama.
One who has no material desires to fulfill.
One who has no material desires to fulfill.
Purusham.
Purusham.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Param.
Param.
The Supreme.
The Supreme.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. And one who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Please repeat. One who desires domination over a kingdom,
One who desires domination over a kingdom
or an empire, should worship the Manus.
should worship the Manus.
One who desires victory over an enemy,
One who desires victory over an enemy
should worship the demons.
should worship the demons.
And one who desires sense gratification,
And one who desires sense gratification
should worship the moon.
should worship the moon.
But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment
But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment
should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Purport. For a liberated person, all the enjoyments listed above are considered to be absolutely useless. Only those who are conditioned by the material modes of external energy are captivated by different types of material enjoyment. In other words, the transcendentalist has no material desires to be fulfilled, whereas the materialist has all types of desires to be fulfilled. The Lord has proclaimed that the materialists who desire material enjoyment and thus seek the favor of different demigods, as above mentioned, are not in control of their senses, and so give themselves to nonsense. One should therefore not desire any sort of material enjoyment, being sensible enough to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The leaders of nonsensical persons are still more nonsensical because they preach openly and foolishly that one can worship any form of demigod and get the same result. This sort of preaching is not only against the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and of those of Srimad Bhagavatam, but is also foolish, just as it is foolish to claim that with the purchase of any travel ticket one may reach the same destination. No one can reach Bombay from Delhi by purchasing a ticket for Baroda. It is clearly defined herein that persons impregnated with different desires have different modes of worship. But one who has no desire for material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, the Personality of Godhead. And this worshipping process is called devotional service. Pure devotional service means service to the Lord without any tinge of material desire, including desires for fruitive activity and empiric speculation. For fulfillment of material desires, one may worship the Supreme Lord. But the result of such worship is different, as will be explained in the next verse. Generally, the Lord does not fulfill anyone's material desires for sense enjoyment, but he awards such benedictions to worshippers of the Lord, for they ultimately come to the point of not desiring material enjoyment. The conclusion is that one must minimize the desires for material enjoyment, and for this one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is described herein as Param, or beyond anything material. Sripad Sankaracharya has also stated, Narayano Paravyaktat, the Supreme Lord is beyond the material encirclement. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Does anyone know the next verse? Famous verse that's coming up tomorrow? Moksha kama udadadi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he is full of all material desires, without material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. So today's verse comes at the end of a long series of recommendations for various worships according to one's desire. The desire is a big part of the various philosophical systems of India, which are listed as 6. One of them is from Gautama, the Buddhist philosophy, which is, again, centered around how to deal with desire. So as you know, the story of Buddha was that he was born in a palace and protected, cloistered by his parents, so he would never see any of the miseries of the world. And then when he went out for the first time as a young man, he saw an old man. He said, "What is that?" He saw his old age. He saw sickness. "What is this?" "What is this?" "Disease." And he saw a corpse. "What is this?" "Well, this is death." So then he resolved that he had been denied the truth. So he resolved that he would dedicate himself to finding out how to deal with these miseries of life. So he came up then with his 4 noble truths. The first one being that life is suffering. Life is suffering. And then the cause of suffering is desire. Desire is the cause of suffering. And third noble truth is if you get rid of desire, you get rid of suffering. And then the 4th noble truth is the 8-fold path to getting rid of desire. So, right livelihood, right this, right that, right that. So in the ultimate end, Buddhism teaches that you destroy your individuality and thus you're free of desire. And this is the perfection of existence. Of course, it is the end of existence also. So it is self-defeating in that respect. Annihilation, in other words, is the way to get rid of desire. This is kind of a suicide. I can't get rid of these desires, so I'll just destroy myself. And then I'll be free. But this has no lasting value because the soul cannot be destroyed. It is eternal. It goes on. And as long as the soul is present, there will be desire. So in answering Maharaj Parikshit's question about the duties of a person on the threshold of death, Shukadeva begins by explaining, okay, whatever your desire is, there's this method to obtain it, this method, this method, this method. But in this verse and in the next, he concludes that one who has no desires for material enjoyment should worship Krishna. And again, tomorrow's verse says, whatever desire you may have, whether you want all material enjoyment, no material enjoyment, or even liberation from material enjoyment, still you should worship Krishna. So the great conquerors of the world, great kings, advised those who want a dominion over a kingdom are advised to worship Manus. There's an interesting story about Alexander the Great, who at the time was the greatest conqueror in the history of humanity. So he directed that when he died, his funeral procession should have some unusual features. He wanted some of his servants out front throwing out gold coins. And then he wanted that he should be on a palanquin with his palms open facing the sky. And this palanquin, he directed, should be carried by 6 physicians. So they said, yes, we'll do that, but could you explain what is the reason? And he said, I want my wealth to be distributed so that everyone can see that wealth accumulated is ultimately enjoyed by other people. And I want my hands open to the sky to show that although I acquired so much, I left this world with nothing. And I want my physicians to carry me so everyone can see that no matter who you have to help you, they're not going to stop you from that. So this is the reason why material enjoyment is so futile, because it is ephemeral, it is unsustainable, and it's frustrating on top of everything else. It's frustrating to try to get it, because if you get it, you can't keep it. So for this reason, for a liberated person, Prabhupada says, all the enjoyments listed above are to be considered to be absolutely useless. Only those who are in the modes of nature would pursue them. In the first canto, in his instructions to Narada Muni, to Vyasadeva, Narada Muni says that intelligent persons, Kovida, those who are actually learned, do not pursue material enjoyment of any kind. Because, for one thing, it comes automatically, just as distress comes without solicitation. Material enjoyment comes, distress comes. They're already determined how much of each you're going to get in this particular lifetime. It's said that the lines on your palm can indicate how much enjoyment you'll get from all the meals you will eat in your lifetime. So in that respect, materially, things are preordained according to our karma, according to our past activities. So what is the point in trying to push the envelope to your advantage? You're going to get the same amount either way. That's true on the material platform. And so much of what Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vedic literatures in general talk about is for people on the material platform. After all, they're trying to reach people on the material platform to bring them to spiritual life. Because, as Krishna says, Vedanta Vedavid Eva Chaham, that I am the compiler of the Vedas, and by all the Vedas I am to be known. So just as all the purposes of a small pond can be fulfilled by a great reservoir of water, so all the purposes of the Vedas are fulfilled to one who knows the true meaning, the purpose behind them. And what is the purpose of the Vedas? To know Krishna. So for a person who knows Krishna, all of these things are very peripheral. Even the enjoyment of liberation, the great goal of wise, thoughtful people, even liberation, as we were reading this morning, is an insignificant byproduct. Isn't that what Haridas Thakur said? It's this insignificant byproduct of devotional service. So we present Krishna consciousness not as this austere, difficult, teeth-gritting means of giving up material desires, but we present it as a very joyful process, anandam buddhi vardhanam. We like to talk about the regulative principles, but we should understand that this scares a lot of people away. These are things which are very dear. These 4 things are very much the purpose of life for most people, isn't it? Intricately wrapped up in their very existence. So we come right out the chute and say, yeah, just follow these 4 regular principles. They'll say, thank you very much. So rather, we need to present Krishna consciousness as a blissful process, which it is. The regulative principles just augment, aid, and protect that bliss. But it's not a good place to start. There's a story in the Hita Upadesh about the jackal and the moose. Have you ever heard this story? The jackal was running through the fields one day and fell into a blind well. It had been grown over by grass. He was trapped in there because the sides were too steep and he couldn't get out. So he was thinking, how do I get out of here? Then he had an idea. He started singing very loudly and dancing boisterously. And a moose passing by the well heard this joyful singing. And he came over and looked down. What are you doing in there? Oh, I'm singing. Dancing. It's very nice. You should try it. So the moose jumped in, and the jackal jumped on his antlers and jumped out. So the point is that people will be attracted by something blissful. And when they taste that transcendental bliss, then it becomes possible to give up the material enjoyment. Can anyone remember a verse from Bhagavad Gita about this point? Param drishvan vartati. Yes, vishya vanivartati. One may artificially restrain from desires and from fulfilling desires, but they will be unable to do so unless there is a higher taste. And when there's a higher taste, then one can be actually fixed in consciousness. So giving people a higher taste is our joyful purpose. And in order to give a higher taste, what do we have to have ourselves?
A higher taste.
Yes. Otherwise, if there's no taste coming from our spiritual practices, then we'll naturally gravitate towards material desires, because the living entity is pleasure-seeking by nature. Anando maya vyasa. So our challenge in spiritual life is how to continue to extract pleasure out of our spiritual practices. It is swimming upstream in the material world. We should know that. When you take to spiritual life, you should know it's not going to be an easy ride. As Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, that one who takes to the path of God will find it is strewn with thorns. It does not guarantee that one is going to have material enjoyment. Srila Prabhupada writes here that generally the Lord does not fulfill anyone's material desires for sense enjoyment, but He awards such benediction to worshippers of the Lord, for they ultimately come to the point of not desiring material enjoyment. Can anyone think of an example from the 4th canto about this principle? Famous example.
Dhruva Maharaj?
Yes, Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva went to the forest. He wanted a kingdom bigger than his father's, because he had been slighted by his father's. I'm going to get a kingdom bigger than my father. And his mother said, well, you should worship Vishnu. So he said, all right. And he went off to do that in the woods. And when he ultimately saw Lord Vishnu, he was very contrite. He said, I was looking for broken pieces of glass, but I found the greatest jewel. So what did Lord Vishnu give him?
Give him the kingdom of his father for 36,000 years, but he also gave him the whole story.
Yes, both the kingdom and the greater kingdom.
He said, you're gonna have to. He said, I don't want it. I don't want it.
I don't want it, but you have to take
You
it.
have to take it.
You asked for it.
Yeah. 36,000 years. And now he's got the full story.
So yes, if we have material desires, it's not a surprise because we've been in this world for so long. So the challenge is actually a very nice challenge. Find something in Krishna consciousness that makes us happy. You know, Prabhupada said, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. One of my godbrothers, Param Brahma Prabhu, used to say, this is not a benediction, this is an order. So we have to find what is it that's going to make us happy, and what is it that makes the devotee happy. When
Equals up.
well, equals out. I was trying to be a little more philosophical. What always makes the devotee happy?
Seeing other people be happy. I go to Harinam, seeing people chanting and dancing.
Seeing other people be happy, and
Service.
yes, when we make other people happy, who else becomes happy?
Krishna.
Yeah, that's the point. When Krishna is pleased, then we feel pleased. So if we're doing something that makes Krishna happy, or if we're doing something that makes us happy in Krishna consciousness, then we should understand this is pleasing to Krishna. If our purpose is pleasing Krishna, if our purpose is always what will bring the Lord pleasure, Samsiddhir Hari Toshna, then our spiritual life will always remain blissful. There was a bhakta once who, I heard a couple of bhaktas talking, and one of them was saying to the other, yeah, I'm just in it for the bliss. I'm just in it for the bliss. You know, and he didn't stay. Because then the bliss wears out, and then we're tested. This is the thing. Krishna is a little selective about his association. We're advised to be selective about our association, right, by Rupa Goswami. Sadhu Sangha, we're supposed to seek, and Jana Sangha, worldly association, we're supposed to avoid. So, similarly, Krishna is selective about who he lets into the spiritual world. It's like we're talking last night about vetting people to come into our community, right? So Krishna also has an application form. You know, he does background checks. He wants to see if our intent is really there to please him, because that's what everyone is doing in the spiritual world, and that's why there's so much harmony, and that's why there's so much there's eternal ecstasy, because everyone has the same purpose of pleasing Krishna, the constitutional position of the living being. Now, how do we find what pleases Krishna? This is, again, it's so individual that we are really the best judges ourselves. Finding something that we love to do that makes us happy, that is part of Krishna's service. A devotee who finds that thing is actually situated in advanced spiritual consciousness and has the strength to bypass all kinds of material desires, because the taste of that particular service is so intense and sweet. That's our task, self-realization, finding out what it is that we want to do for Krishna so much. Rupa Goswami says we should have some particular service we want to do so much that we can shed tears out of the desire. Please, Krishna, let me serve you in this way. That is our path of self-realization. Whatever that service is, it may be a big service, it may be a little service, those are quite irrelevant, because it's not that Krishna needs our service. He's not there in anxiety and go, look, how are we going to spread this Krishna consciousness movement? No, he is already welcoming. He is already engaged with countless devotees who want to serve him without any motivation. And for those, he's compassionate for those who are not there, but he's not ready to abandon the whole show for that purpose. He sends his representatives to help. So As Srila Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya liberated all of India, and he has kindly left the rest of the world for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Somehow we find some way in this sublime mission to contribute our little bit and find pleasure in that. Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he said, you should be a jack of all trades and a master of one. Be able to do everything in Krishna consciousness a little bit. Be reasonably familiar with everything, whether it's deity worship or preaching or studying or cleaning the temple, whatever. But be expert in one thing. Find something that you really love and become expert in that. This is Prabhupada's advice. So being a meaningful specific and not a wandering generality. I'm a devotee. Okay, I'm a devotee, but this is my service for Krishna. And then that service should be like our heart and soul. And this is easy to do and natural because it's something that we love to do. That's when we are firmly situated on the spiritual platform. We have that service, we know what we want to do, we want to do this for the rest of our lives, like Srila Prabhupada's Vani from his order from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, spread Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world. From the moment they met, he got that instruction, right? And that was his life and soul. That was his GPS for the rest of his life, trying to fulfill that order of his spiritual master. It was given when they met, and then it was affirmed in the last letter he received from his Guru Maharaj. So he had that order, that specific service to do, and because he kept focused on that, he was never tainted by any scandal, he was never deviated in his purpose, he was always blissful. One time a challenging college student, after Prabhupada's lecture, asked him, "Are you happy?" So what do you do when you get a tough question? It's a good way to respond.
With another question.
With another question, right. So Prabhupada said, "If I tell you, will you believe me?" Such a good question, right? Because what can the guy say? If he says no, then he's exposed as a bigot. Just a narrow-minded idiot. So he said, "Yes." And Prabhupada said, "Yes." So it's a very blissful challenge, which you agree, finding what it is that makes us happy in serving Krishna. That is the cure for material desires. If we don't find joy in our spiritual life, we will naturally gravitate towards all kinds of very self-defeating behavior. I suppose none of you pure-hearted souls here have ever seen this movie, but there's a movie called The Matrix. No, anyone ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Read that on much likes to talk about. There's a classic scene where the hero is given a choice. You can take this pill and see the reality, or you can take this pill and remain in an illusion. And the illusion is a very familiar way of life to him. And the guy says, you can't reverse this, it's one or the other. So he takes the pill to see the reality, and the reality is very ugly. This has so many parallels with Krishna consciousness. We may be the fox dancing in the well. Yeah, it's very nice down here. But when we see the reality of spiritual life, it is a life of vairagya vidya, of knowledge and renunciation. You cannot have it both ways. A life of leisure and laziness and opulence and spiritual life. It is vairagya vidya. You need to be up in the morning. You can't sleep till 9 and have bed tea, rati. And it's okay, now bring me my japa beads. Actually, in the very early days, I don't know if any of you remember this, but before devotees knew more, they used to say, "Prabhu, I have so much service to do, could you say my Gayatri for me? Isn't this the idea that paid Brahmins, right? They do, the rich man hires priests to do yajnas on his behalf. He doesn't actually have to do it, but they do on his behalf. And then he gets the punya. So spiritual life is not something that we can purchase. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had one donor. They were a small group living in a rented house, and then one rich man became interested in their organization, and he gave a big sum of money so they could build a big marble temple in Bhagbazar. And that man was once in a darshan with Bhaktisiddhanta, and he was talking with somebody on the side. And Bhaktisiddhanta stopped and said, "You think you have purchased me with this donation?" Very heavy. And later he said, "Better we sell all the marbles and print books." So the point is that we cannot purchase Krishna. We cannot make Krishna obliged. This is one of these 6 philosophies. It's karma mimamsa, that higher powers are just obliged to act according to karma if we do our sacrifices. Krishna was preaching this to Nanda Maharaj and Govardhan Lila. If you worship the demigods, they have to respond. They're obliged to do the sacrifice. So who needs them? They're just mechanical order suppliers. We should instead worship the actual source of our opulence, which is Govardhan. So the devotee deals with material desires by finding out what he or she really desires to do for Krishna. Isn't that nice? Finding out, discovering our spiritual desire. And that supplants the need for material sense gratification. So any comments or questions on this? Yogi Prabhu?
You've left the onus on us to find out, what interests us and makes us really joyful in Krishna consciousness. But isn't there some other key to help us along the way to figure this out?
When we start Krishna consciousness, we need to be told what to do. We need guidance. Yes, from the beginning. But like we were talking about last night, that we come to a point where we have experienced the narta nivritti, the reduction of material desires and breaking of bad habits, miraculously, amazingly. That gives us nishta, firm faith, unshakable faith. So at that point, it becomes our responsibility to find out, okay, how do I want to serve Krishna? What's going to bring me to these higher stages of ruchi and asakti and bhava and prema? Once a disciple, Ishan Prabhu, asked Srila Prabhupada, "Prabhupada, what would you like me to do for Krishna?" And Prabhupada said, "What would you like to do for Krishna?" Again, answering the question with a question. What would you like to do for Krishna? Whatever you say, Srila Prabhupada. No, I asked you, what do you want to do for Krishna? So he thought about it and said, I would like to make mridangas that don't break so easily. Because that was a big problem. Remember, those very fragile clay mridangas, you bring them from India with great difficulty and they break in a moment. So Prabhupada said, yes, so do it. So that was the origin of the Balaram mridanga. He figured out how to make them out of fiberglass. That was his particular thing to do for Krishna. So Prabhupada not only wanted but expected us to come up with it. The general things, yes, we need the Guru's instruction, but the specific things, the Gita is full of what's called ichcha, or choice. Krishna's always telling Arjuna that he has the choice. At the very end, one gentleman told me, this is my favorite verse in the Bhagavad Gita. What's that? Where Krishna says, now do whatever you want to do. But it's a very profound verse, so much different than the Judeo-Christian concept of God, isn't it? I think the last words of the Old Testament are, lest I smite the earth with a curse, or else. you better follow, or else. But Krishna's last word, yate chasi tathakuru. Now do what you wish to do. Ichcha, the choice. So we have general regulations we have to follow, but then we have specific choices we have to make about how to serve. And of course we can take guidance from our guru, we can take guidance from older devotees. As I go on in the years of Krishna consciousness, I've just come to realize that there's so many decisions to make. Spiritual life is really just a series of decisions. And after the initial stages, those decisions are both right, It's like Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Another great yogi. In other words, it's not that there's a wrong decision if we're going to serve Krishna this way or this way. Rather, there are consequences, and we should carefully consider the consequences of those choices. Should I serve Krishna as a brahmachari or as a grihastha? There are consequences of both. As the Bengali saying goes, one who marries laments, one who does not marry laments. Right? So there's consequences. Which set of consequences is more suitable for my psychophysical nature? Am I a loner? I really prefer not to have to make any money. Then perhaps renunciation is the way to go, although I'll pay a price for that. Am I wanting to have control of my environment? Am I wanting to be interacting a lot with others? Then grihastha life is a good choice, but that comes with a price also. So which set of consequences? Neither one is wrong. You can do either one for Krishna, but which set of consequences do I want? So this is the question we have to ask ourselves as we're considering our choices. Okay?
Yes, it's nice, thank you.
Sometimes we can do them both.
We do them both. One time, Satsvarup Maharaj had this service of, he was helping, I think, Prabhupada's typing or something, in one service. Actually, he had a GBC zone, that was it. And he was responsible to go around and establish the Bhagavatam class in all of the temples. And then he saw Vishnu John Swami was traveling with a bus and doing festivals. And he asked Prabhupada, I'm doing this rather kind of sedate service with the temple. Should I be traveling and doing festivals like Vishnu John? And Prabhupada said, Krishna's head is important, Krishna's tail is important. Why do you have to do one or the other? Krishna's head is important, Krishna's tail is important. Never knew Krishna had a tail. So he wanted him to do both, not to make a decision. But it's not always possible to do. In most cases, we have to do one or the other, but we can't do them well.
So, it's a very nice class. Thank you. But when Prabhu was here and instructing the mission, Prabhupada, there was a common saying when a devotee would come visit, you'd say, well, Prabhu, what's your program? That was a common phrase that we used. What's your program? So, college preaching, book distribution. But also, though, like if you had desires to do something, like there was one devotee, some of us know, a very nice devotee passed away. He always wanted to make a movie. He was constantly asking Prabhupada about that. And and also I relate with my own self, that there was times when I felt I was put in a situation, sort of like, well, I was left in Atlanta and I didn't want to be there. And I'd come from New York, and Atlanta was I'm a northerner, and they're southerners that don't fit. It's a small temple, there was a lot going on there. And so I kept contemplating, well, if I go to India, and I can get more association with Prabhupada that way. So, because in India, the devotees, you know, in America, there'd be crowds and, you know, only a few people would be associated. But if you're in India, you had more personal association with Prabhupada. So, but in the end, you know, what I understood from Rupanuga, who was my GBC at the time, I said to him, I've done this service, I've come to Atlanta to help to serve, and but I don't really feel like I know my spiritual master. And he said, well, do you listen to his lectures? I said, yes. Do you read his books? Yes. Do you hear the letters when they're? Yes, I do. Yeah. I said, then you know Prabhupada. And so the point was is that in the end, by me agreeing to stay at that place, even though my desire was for more association and other specific services, all my desires were fulfilled because I surrendered to the mission. And that pleased Yasha Prasada Bhagavat Prasada, Yasha Prasada Nagatika. By pleasing the spiritual master, he becomes enthused. And when we see the spiritual master's enthused, we become more enthused. And generally, so by staying there, he came to me. He came to, not just to me, but he came in a situation and fulfilled all those desires that I had.
So you were happy?
So I was happy, yes. But my point is that, yeah, I agree. You have to find that, but that comes by cooperating with the mission of Srila Prabhupada, by cooperating with his desires.
By cooperating with his desire, yes. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I'm not contradicting. I'm just saying.
Exactly. This is an advanced stage. It's not newcomers say, okay, I want to serve Krishna in this way, and that's what I'm going to do. You know, I don't want to wash the pots. I don't want to clean the floor. I don't want to do anything. This is all I want to do.
Yeah, I just want to go and make a movie.
Yeah, exactly. One disciple came to Srila Prabhupada. He had been raising money in the Middle East, I believe. One of the pioneers, and he brought a bunch of money to Prabhupada, cash, put it on Prabhupada's desk and said, Prabhupada, I want to take sannyas. and Prabhupada said, why do you want to take sannyas? And the boy thought and said, because it is my desire. And Prabhupada said, we should ask what is Krishna's desire. He didn't give him sannyas. So it sounds like from your experience that because you were adhering to the order of the spiritual master, you found your fulfillment.
Well, the thing is that the society was structured in a way. There was Srila Prabhupada, his GBCs, the temple presidents, temple commanders, Sankirtandas, and you found your program within that and you know, the temple president would have to make a decision: is this person best suited for Sankirtan, or is he a real good cook? You know, or something else, you know, and try to engage them. And then you had a right to appeal and so on and so forth. But the real purpose is that by cooperating with that mission of spreading Lord Chaitanya's movement under the guidance of the founder Acharya, you will find that place eventually. But you will find who you are.
Yes.
You know, but you have to submit yourself to the desires of the spiritual master.
Yes, it's the order, the desire of the spiritual master. Varna Kuriyo Mani Asha. The perfection of our life is to fulfill this desire.
You must deserve the desire.
And this is reminding me of my own experience with Srila Prabhupada. As so many of us in our generation, I always hankered on, just want to have personal association with Prabhupada. And I got to do it one time. It was in Chicago in 1975. And I was traveling, doing book distribution full time. And we traveled, I mean, we lived in a van, we were constantly traveling. And our director said we'd take a couple of days off to spend with Srila Prabhupada in Chicago. So my friend was cooking for Prabhupada. He said, you want to help me cook? I said, sure, I don't know how to cook, but he said, that's all right. So he engaged me in making sandesh. And sandesh is, it's just really elbow grease. You just keep kneading the curd long enough until it becomes smooth. So I was doing that. And then he said, you want to offer the plate to Prabhupada? I said, thank you, yes. So I went into Prabhupada's room with the plate, and Prabhupada was sitting there alone. He looked at me and said nothing. And I was 21 years old, and this is what I've been hankering for 3 years or so to be with Prabhupada. He said nothing. I put the plate down and did everything as instructed, and left the room. And then he rang the bell, which meant he was finished, and came in, took the plate, left the room. I was thinking at that moment, I'm going to get some remnants. And just the very nanosecond I closed Prabhupada's door, the door across the hall opened. It was Brahmananda. Where's Prabhupada's plate? But before he took the plate, I saw he had eaten some sandesh, so I was, that was very, very sad. But my point is, just to finish the story.
Yeah, sure.
The next day, my cook friend came to me and said, "Oh, Prabhupada was asking, why are so many men staying back from book distribution to cook for me?"
Right.
So what I thought was so pleasing was actually not really what Prabhupada said. So from that I understood it. The real relationship with the Guru is through the body. If you think about it, how many of us will be with our Gurus? How many of us will get much time with our Gurus in this life? Very few, and it won't endure in any case. So all we really have is the instruction and the cooperation with the other devotees. I'm going to ask if anyone else has any comments or questions real quick. Yes?
Prabhu, you mentioned about regulations. Sometimes, especially for the new people who come to the temple, they come to the movement, and they are being instructed, for example, to come to Mangalarti, they have to chant the 16 rounds, and so and so. But then there is some lack of real understanding. What is the meaning of that? Why Srila Prabhupada say specifically, come to Mangalarti, participate in the morning program, and so we can also preach to them, and it won't become just maybe kind of a social requirement to live in a community, because what I understand is it's a process of purification, and we have to show the results, not just make okay, I am following this, but I don't know really for what I am doing or what is my behavior, how my behavior is going to improve and change with this.
Yes, right. These two causes of fall down, niyamagraha and niyamagraha, to follow the rules and regulations blindly without the purpose of spiritual advancement, or to ignore them. Both of them will make it difficult to advance. So for the newcomer, what you said is very important. We need to show those of us who are affixed in those practices that it is a happy life. It isn't going to happen because, we're not doing it just because we are afraid not to do it. Or we're doing it out of some obligation. But we do it because we enjoy it. Because we know the difference between a day when we do these things and a day when we don't. We can feel it. And therefore we do it out of spontaneous desire. However modest that spontaneity might be, however modest that desire might be, we have a desire and we enjoy it. The newcomer won't understand that. So there has to be some period of regimentation. But what we can say is that you try this. Try this and then evaluate the result. Don't prejudge it. Just with an open mind, experience what it's like to live in this regulated yogic environment, sadhana bhakti, and then decide. There's no obligation. You don't have to sign a document that says, now I am a Hare Krishna believer. You don't have to. In fact, that does no good at all. So we like to tell people that there's a karma-back guarantee with Krishna consciousness. If you don't like it, you can go right back to what you were doing. There's no obligation. And people have a very hard time understanding what this subtle motivation of devotees is. And it's very much connected with this verse, where we are afraid of materialism, of material desires screwing up our spiritual lives. And so we have to keep that, and they're chomping at our heels, so we have to keep moving. And that's what it means. Morning program means we're just trying to keep ahead of the material desires. It is a constant, it's a daily commitment. It is ecstatic. You can't say, okay, I now believe. I believe in Krishna, and now I am saved. It is a daily commitment. I learned in my Christian upbringing to fear God and love the things of the world. That was more or less what I learned. And in Krishna consciousness, from Srila Prabhupada, I learned to love God and fear the things of the world. All right, any other comments? It's late now. Thank you very much. Pleasure to see you.
Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada.